on the floor from both sides of the aisle, really. In fact, Senator Durbin just spoke not too long ago, is the fact that many of them saying that they would miss the camaraderie that they had. There's been some pretty heated back and forth politically with some of these senators, so the fact that they're coalescing around just a human that Graham was, I think, is quite the touching tribute. There was one striking moment when Majority Leader John Thune teared up. He got quite emotional at the end of his speech. He capped it off by saying that he'll laugh together again with him, and that's when he ultimately yielded the floor back to the current Speaker of the Senate. I want to also point out that we've been hearing from some of his colleagues on the left as well. Earlier today, we heard from Senator Shaheen from New Hampshire in a post on social media saying that she wanted to, champion the fact that he, and part of his last leg here before he passed away, was really adamant at getting across the finish line this Russian sanctions bill. He got cooperation from the Trump administration for the Senate to move forward with that bill that would provide pretty hefty sanctions to Russia for its aggression against Ukraine. He also met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky just moments ago, just a few days ago. So it's also pretty striking. Shaheen saying the most fitting tribute would be for bipartisanship to get this bill across the finish line, send it to the House, and ultimately to the president's desk for his signature as well, Mugo.
And Torian, what are we learning about the family members set to replace the late senator?
Yeah, I mean, this started with President Trump himself on his social media this morning saying that he would lend his endorsement and his encouragement to the current governor, Henry McMaster, to appoint his sister, Darline Graham, as his replacement. It looks like they're about to start that, but if I could point out just a little bit of what we've heard about Darline, obviously the sibling of Graham, they had quite the unique upbringing. Graham had to take over as her guardian as they lost both of their parents within, not too long of a distance of each other. She talked about in a political ad about her relationship with him. If he's not on the stage just yet, I would love for us to hear just a little bit of what she had to say about her relationship with Graham.
Lindsey knows what it feels like to lose everything at a young age. Our mom got cancer and passed away. And about a year and a half later, we lost our dad too. I was just a kid. I remember that day, Lindsey came running in and just grabbed me up and hugged me. And he was like, "I am so sorry." He said, "But it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna take care of you. And you will never find anybody else that cares more and works harder for this state than he does." Lindsey's heart is South Carolina.
Darlene's appointment would handle Graham's absence in the interim, but he's also on the ballot, or was on the ballot, in November. As it relates to that, there's a special election that's set to happen. There'll be about a 7-day window for contenders to throw their names in the running before they're ultimately selected or chosen to replace him. Among those are a few congresspeople, including Representative Nancy Mace, who lost her bid for governor and decided she was retiring. She signaled several times on social media that she's now interested in this seat. Ralph Norman as well, another person. He finished third place in the gubernatorial race and said that he would also consider joining in the running for this as well. And I guess we're going to hear from the governor in a little bit as they approach the stage, Mugo.
Yeah, it certainly looks like the governor is getting ready to make that announcement. So I'm wondering if we should listen into what he has to say, but it looks like they're still preparing and getting ready for that moment. Again, this is the governor of South Carolina, Henry McMaster, getting ready. Let's listen in.
This is an important day in South Carolina history. There'll be other celebrations and events of all kinds. But I and the family thank all of you for coming here today. We lead in sadness over the loss of one of South Carolina's greatest sons. Here we also gather together to celebrate what this self-described poor boy from a small town, rural town in South Carolina accomplished through grit, determination, and character for his state, for his country, and for his world. Lindsey Graham recognized the greatness of America and her obligations to a dangerous world. Lindsey Graham recognized the seriousness of his work, but also the value of humor and a light-hearted spirit. Lindsey Graham understood the hopes, dreams, and needs of his state and delivered for his state every time. Presidents, paupers, famous or forgotten, he treated us all the same. We have seen him attack evil and injustice and embrace friendship and the common good with equal fervor and strength. Yes, we are going to miss Lindsey, but we will always remember his quickness, his laugh, and what he has done for us and the world. As he described himself, this poor boy from a little town in South Carolina. Today, under the law, it's my duty and honor to name someone to serve in the place of this irresistible man, this irreplaceable man, this extraordinary man for the remainder of his term. Lindsey took care of his little sister in years long departed. It's my honor to ask his little sister, Darline Graham, to finish his work for him now. And by the way, Darline, I don't know if I told you, but after we spoke on the phone in the wee hours of Sunday morning, and you agreed to serve through tears, earlier, I had wondered what you would say, and I was humbled by your quickness to see the duty that you had to serve. And I called the president afterwards, and he thought it was a great idea. And I'm sure that everyone here does as well. Darling, little sister, come forward, please.
Thank you, Governor, and just bear with me as I try to get through this. But first, I just want to say one thing I've never heard Lindsey described as is irresistible. So, okay, we'll just start with that. But first, I would like to thank everyone who has called and reached out over the past couple of days. I can't tell you how much it's meant to me and our family. I know Lindsey was loved and respected by many, and I greatly appreciate the memories and even the funny stories that have been shared. These shared experiences, along with our faith, have gotten us through these past 2 very difficult days. Next, I want to thank the governor for selecting me to serve the remainder of Lindsey's term. It is such an honor. Lindsey has always been there for me, and now I will be there for him. My brother was the most amazing person, outstanding leader, and just a genuinely good man. He was kind and considerate and loved by his family dearly. As I think everyone would agree, Lindsey worked harder than anyone. He worked nonstop to make our state, country, and world better. He loved his family and loved serving this state and our country. He dedicated his life to our country. It is such a privilege to get to finish some of his important work, and I promise to work hard over the next several months to support the president and carry forward the efforts of my brother on behalf of the citizens of South Carolina and the United States. I know Lindsey thought the world of his staff and colleagues, and with their support, I feel confident. I think this is what Lindsey would have wanted, and I plan to honor him in this way. Now, to Lindsey, I miss you more than I can even put into words, but I'm going to do this. I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes this ceremony. Thank you.
right, you were just listening to the governor of North Carolina, Henry McMaster, naming the replacement for late Senator Lindsey Graham. Of course, the person chosen to replace him as of right now is his younger sister, Darline. Let's go back live now to our nation's capital and CBS News congressional reporter, Torian Small. Torian, your takeaways from what you heard there.
Yeah, Mugo, I mean, the most striking thing she said was at the end there. She said she misses him, but she's going to do this. She got this. Kind of her speaking directly to her brother in the wake of his passing. I got to point out, she came to the podium with a bit of levity. I think we all caught a bit of the gaffe that the governor made there. He meant to say irreplaceable, but he said irresistible. Yeah, she called it out himself, saying that she's never heard her brother called that. But I think this is a moment that stood quite powerfully for the sister of Lindsey Graham. She's now essentially serving as a placeholder. She wouldn't necessarily assume the same ranks as Senator Graham on the Hill. He was, of course, the chairman of the Budget Committee. The next senior member would likely take over, of course, after Republican leadership was to decide that. I got to get into the weeds of this, unfortunately, as well as the other committees that he's on. Considering Senator Mitch McConnell is also out, that leaves the balance of power in some of these committees up in limbo, including the Senate Appropriations Committee that Senator Graham was a part of. It's now, unless my math is off, 14-14, so it's almost even now until Senator McConnell returns with Darline taking over in his place. And one big thing that Republicans are trying to push through eventually, but most likely expeditiously, considering that they're looking at the midterms in November, is a third reconciliation bill. That would have to go through the Appropriations Committee, and as of now, the current chairwoman, Susan Collins of Maine, has said that she wasn't necessarily supportive or saw a pathway forward for a third reconciliation bill. We'll see what happens, but as of now, today's conversation, the oxygen on the Hill, is undoubtedly going to Senator Graham, and as just announced in that press conference, his sister succeeding him, not just in life for his family, but also in profession here on the Hill in his seat until January.
Yeah, and Torian, I was going to ask about that too. Help us understand this. This is all temporary, correct? So by January, I suppose there's going to be some sort of re-election to officially choose who is going to, well, for voters to choose who is going to replace Graham.
Yeah, and Mugo, the reason for that is because Lindsey Graham was up for re-election this year. He already won his primary, so he would have been on the ballot in November. Technically, he's still on the ballot or set to be on the ballot, but there's also a separate track happening, a special election that's going to happen. We now know between July 21st and July 28th. That's when many candidates could throw their names in the running. We're already hearing from quite a few of them that expressed interest in it, including a couple of folks here on the Hill. Representative Nancy Mace and Representative Ralph Norman both ran unsuccessfully for governor, but have announced that they are interested, or at least pursuing the idea of running in this race. We also got to point out Lieutenant Governor Pamela Abbott also ran unsuccessfully for governor. I believe she finished in second place. We talked to her this morning on CBS News 24/7. She was playing coy about whether or not she would seriously consider it, but she said that she wasn't necessarily ruling anything out, only that her priorities right now was on paying tribute to the fallen Lindsey Graham.
Okay, Torian Small on Capitol Hill for us today. Thank you so much for your time. And now let's bring in congressional correspondent for the New York Times, Robert Jimison. Robert, thank you for your time as well. So Congress has a lot to get done on its legislative agenda ahead of a lengthy August recess. So how does Graham's death complicate the legislation they'd like to get passed?
Well, you saw today, by quickly naming a replacement, there's not the issue of having another Republican vacant. So they're still going to have that vote. You heard his sister say there that she will carry out his legacy, carry out his wishes. So there's no doubts that she'll be voting in any other way than what we would have expected to come from Senator Graham, were he to still be in the Senate. But the big thing is you lose that seniority, what Torian was talking about, the influence that Lindsey Graham had on the Senate, his seniority that comes with years and years and years of being in the Senate. And the biggest way that is probably going to be felt is on that reconciliation process. Republicans in the Senate and the House have depended on this process multiple times during Trump's second term to get the majority of his domestic policy agenda, through Congress. Looking back at the One Big Beautiful Bill a year ago, the DHS bill that funded Department of Homeland Security and Immigration for several more years. Those were all done through reconciliation, and there was a big hope that would be done again for a number of other issues. And Lindsey Graham was arguably the biggest champion of doing that. And a number of Republicans were not in favor of pursuing this legislative tactic again. And so you lose a big advocate for that process, and that is likely going to be the biggest thing felt in terms of legislative agenda and priorities with his absence.
Yeah, some very important context to have there, Robert. So in your most recent piece, you write, with Lindsey Graham gone, Ukraine loses an ally in Trump's ear. What will Graham's loss mean for the relationship between the United States and Ukraine?
I don't think it can be overstated. The president is surrounded by a number of senior advisors and officials who really buy in to this America First policy of the United States should be focused solely on domestic issues and not so much concerned with issues abroad. Lindsey Graham was one of the very few people who both had the president's ear and also disagreed with that thinking quite a bit and advocated for Israel, for Iran, but most notably, he advocated for more support for Ukraine as they continue to fight back against Vladimir Putin's war of aggression. And so by losing Senator Graham, you're losing the strongest voice in the Trump orbit who's been advocating for more weapons support, tougher sanctions, all sorts of policies that are aimed to help Ukraine fight back against Russia. That voice is now gone. And so it's unclear whether other Republicans will take up his mission here and try to continue to push for that and get the president on board. We'll see in the coming days what that looks like. One of the very last things Senator Graham did before coming back to the United States, a day before he passed, was he held a press conference in Kyiv where he said that the president was on board with a new sanctions package to try to help Ukraine in this push as they fight against Russia. It's been something he's been working on for well over a year, and we'll see if he's able to have this be a defining piece of his legacy, and if Republicans will take this up in honor of his death.
Yeah, we'll see what comes next on that front. Robert Jimison, thank you so much for your insight today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now let's go to CBS News political reporter Catherine Watson. Catherine, we know Senator Graham had a close relationship with the president. How is he reacting to news of his death?
Yeah, well, as was mentioned, Lindsey Graham was a Trump whisperer, especially on foreign policy issues, a big link between the Senate and Senate Republicans and the president, and Graham and President Trump would go golfing often. President Trump has, of course, called his friend's death sad. He praised Graham's work ethic. Look, the president is not one to show sadness publicly, though. He didn't mention Graham at a Freedom 250 Grand Prix event at the White House this afternoon, but the president has urged the Senate to pass that sanctions bill that Graham was working on right before his death. And he publicly backed Darline, Graham's sister, to take her brother's seat, which we just saw moments ago was announced.
Yeah, and Catherine, we just got some breaking news about the president notifying Congress that fighting in Iran has resumed. What more do we know about that?
Yeah, President Trump has formally notified Congress that military action against Iran has continued, has resumed. We knew the strikes had happened, of course, but it's pretty notable that the president formally notified Congress. The ceasefire is officially dead now, if it wasn't before. And one of the questions that we're asking here, Mugo, is whether the White House or Congress believes that that officially kicks off the clock for needing congressional approval for the war. You may remember that the White House said they didn't need congressional approval because hostilities had stopped. We'll see what happens now.
Yeah, we'll see. And the president says the U.S., he said this earlier today, the U.S. is going to keep this straight and, quote, run it. What is the status of negotiations then between the U.S. and Iran for that to actually happen? And obviously with the president now notifying Congress, it seems things are just moving in the wrong direction here.
Well, in 2 words, Muga, I would say the state is not good. The president said the U.S. will run the Strait of Hormuz and charge 20% tolls on cargo passing through, even though the Trump administration, Secretary Rubio in particular, had insisted before that the strait must be free and open. Iran's foreign secretary responded to President Trump's comments by saying, yes, basically the country that runs the strait should collect tolls. and he said that country is Iran. Now, U.S. Central Command recently announced that they are reimposing, as President Trump suggested would happen, the naval blockade to stop vessels going in and out of Iranian ports, a way to stymie Iran's economy. So U.S.-Iran relations are falling apart really quickly at a time when the Trump administration hoped that they would be buttoning up a deal.
Okay, Catherine Watson, thank you for your time today. And still ahead, a deadly shooting involving ICE agent sparks protests in Maine. What officials say led up to the shooting. That's next. Stay with us on CBS News 24/7.
The only way to get a 360-degree understanding of America is to get out there in America. There really is no swing at all when it comes to the priorities of everyday people. We care about how secure our job is, whether we can plan on retiring with dignity, whether our kids can have a brighter future than we have today. These are the fundamentals of American life, and I think they can be again.
Why doesn't he tell Republicans, come into my office, let's hammer this thing out?
Margaret, it's a totally fair question.
Politics isn't a game. Why are you opposed to this deployment?
It's unconstitutional.
Politics is about policy. I'm a voracious consumer of information, and I'm impatient. I don't like to be spun. To be moderator of Face the Nation means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
We don't want to accept that there's evil that walks amongst us, but it does.
You know how when you meet somebody, you can't put your finger on it, but something's not right?
You never know what anybody is capable of.
I am a serial killer who's only killed once.
Did you think when this goes public, this town's gonna be shocked?
Absolutely.
When you're dealing with a 30-year-old cold case, it seems like there's not a lot of hope.
We knew there was a monster out there and we were going to find him and get him.
Look at him just coming around the corner like that. We started tracking the area.
When did this accident scene become a crime scene?
Police!
You called him a lying liar who lies about lying.
Do you know why we're stopping you today?
What makes you so sure that you stabbed your sister while you were sleepwalking?